At that time, because they're old people, they're not there at night.
Well, yeah, we had that conversation yesterday. The first time I'm like, wait a minute.
Recording in progress.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar with eLotus. We have been hosting educational courses at eLotus for over 2 decades and are proud to be your trusted source for premium CEU content with over 250 speakers, 900 courses, and 3,500 hours of continuing education. My name is Donna Chow and I'll be your host and your moderator for today's class. Today's webinar is part 2 of Amplify Your Acupuncture Results with Frequency Specific Microcurrent, also known as FSM, with Jimmy Yen. We had part 1 yesterday with Shannon Goosen, so we learned the basics with her, and today we will learn how to incorporate FSM into a TCM practice, specific history intake methods that quickly reveal key underlying issues, and how to choose and apply dual-channel microcurrent protocols with TCM treatments. This course covers fibromyalgia, conditions related to the peripheral nervous system, emotional trauma, PTSD, and case studies for special practices like fertility. The class time will be from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. We'll have 4 breaks, and Jimmy will let you know when those are, and we'll also have a lunch from 1 to 2 p.m. approximately. Before we begin, let's go over some important details about the chat room, questions for our instructor, and your CEU quiz. For the chat room, please set your chat preference to everyone, and we ask that you do this now so that everyone, whatever you're typing into the chat room, everyone can see what you're typing and be part of the conversation. For questions for Jimmy, please type them directly to the Q&A box instead of the chat room. That way it's all organized and he's able to see it. And for your quiz, it will be available the next working day, which is tomorrow on Monday. An email will be sent to you when it's ready. All right, guys, let's go ahead and start today's class. Our speaker today is Jimmy Yen, a seasoned acupuncturist and herbalist with over 10 years of experience. Jimmy started his private practice, Achieve Integrative Health, in 2007 and built it into one of the largest acupuncture clinics in the Austin metro area, where they are focused on quick, effective, and long-lasting results. Since 2018, Jimmy has been an eLotus speaker, teaching classes on neuropathy, diabetes, gastroenterology, and practice management. I recommend the Gold Pass membership to watch all of his prior courses for free, receive limitless CEUs from hundreds of other courses, and get free herbs, of course. I'll share the link with you in just a bit, but for now, let's go ahead and begin today's class and welcome Jimmy Yen.
All right, can you hear me? Perfect. Well, good morning, everybody, and happy Chinese or Lunar New Year if you celebrate it. My name is Jimmy Yen, and I will be introducing myself a little later. So quick Q&A. So I want you to type into the chat. How did you think about the class yesterday with Shannon? What did you think about the class yesterday with Shannon? Type into the chat. Very cool. Great info. Awesome. Loved it. Interesting. It's interesting. New acupuncturist here. Helpful. Awesome. Mind blowing. Very good. Awesome. So everybody loves you, Shannon. So awesome. So for those of y'all who were here yesterday, you probably, noticed that Shannon had so much information to share with you, and she just ran out of time because we also had the 2 demo patients. Let me actually do another Q&A. How many did y'all like the demo patients? Did y'all actually like to see us live treating people? Yes. Yes. Okay. Great. Perfect. Guess what? We got a surprise for you. They're coming back today. Okay. So we're going to not only, a lot of the times with these demo patients, we treat them once and then they just go off and then we don't know what happened to them. So that's why we're bringing them back again today so they can give you some feedback and into, the microcurrent treatments. And then I will also go in a little more detail about what I did with acupuncture, and we will also treat the other gentleman with acupuncture using my QRA. So we will, so that's going to be in the afternoon. Okay. So we're going to change up the format just a little because we want to make sure we get you all the information and especially that Shannon has. And so what we're going to start off with is have Shannon finish up her presentation from yesterday, because there's a lot of crucial information that you can learn. And after she's done, then we'll switch back to me, and then I will go over my case studies. All right. So let's bring up Shannon.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. It's just a delight to work with you. And it is phenomenal how the staff has been here. So I got to meet Tina on the first night I was here, and Donna and Sam have been in the studio. I love being in the studio. I love being live. I love hosting live events. I'm glad some of you are very interested in seeing some of this happen live, because the energy that happens in a room when all of the practitioners come together and we share is phenomenal. And I am a lifelong learner, and some of you probably figured that out yesterday. I am always looking for what is the next thing that I can do that will make a change in my practice. Now, I understand that frequency specific microcurrent is not going to be for everybody for a variety of reasons. And understanding that, when I am presenting and teaching, one of the things that I did is like, what can I do as a practitioner and an instructor that even when I'm talking about using a device or any modality for that matter, how can I share information with you that you can use regardless of what you're doing. And that was really my great hope for what we did yesterday, that anyone would be able to take the information from yesterday and say, oh, I have a pearl. I have something that I can apply, even if I'm not doing FSM, even if I don't do devices, even if the only thing I'm going to do is acupuncture, even if the only thing I'm going to do is herbs, I now have a way to have these pearls that I got yesterday. And they're the pearls that get missed from the fields that you rely on to give you that information. And now you don't have to rely on them. You have that information and you can apply it. You can think about the central nervous system differently. You can think about concussion differently. You can think about fibromyalgia differently. And you can ask more questions and do inquiry with your patients. So I'm delighted that you enjoyed what we did yesterday. I'm hoping that you grabbed pearls here and there as it applies to your practice. And maybe some of you got just a bunch of information that finally went, wait a minute, all of this fits together. It's a string of pearls from all of these different fields. And now I understand what is happening and how it all fits together. So remember, in ancient Chinese medicine and the older traditions, you didn't get to be a specialist until you were a generalist. The generalist was the specialist, and that was the person that knew so much about every single area of human health, vitality, and living a full life. And so this is where I want to just bring as much of that to you as possible. So I appreciate your interest, and I am now going to finish the cliffhanger of what happened yesterday. And it was so perfect that it unfolded with our people that were our demonstration patients yesterday, because they both brought up the emotional things that had happened in their life and how it had impacted the injuries that they had and how they were going forward. So with that, I'm going to remind you that we were talking about these things that happen to the central nervous system and concussion, people getting neck injuries, people having spinal cord pain, nerve pain, joint pain, bilateral hip pain, and degeneration. And then there's this piece to it. It's like, who is that person that has it? Because that's really, really at the core and probably the most important missing piece of how we take care of patients collectively, and certainly in allopathic medicine. So when I was working with, well, and I still am, the military, and I started presenting this information, I was a little hesitant because there was pushback about talking about emotions and psychological conditions. And there was really a skewed belief. It's like, oh, they're just crazy. And very, very few people, in my opinion, are crazy. I think what is happening when we see all these situations of psychological distress and emotional distress and really, really uncontrolled emotional behavior and outbursts, and people going into deep depression and people not being able to function optimally in their daily life, that to me is not a psychiatric diagnosis. Most of those people are having a completely normal reaction to abnormal human events in their life. And so what the responses that we're seeing and what our patients are going through, completely normal based on the abnormal way that society has cultured parenting and taking care of children, and what we have come to consider normal, abnormal normal. So let's dive in and talk about that a little bit as the underpinnings for what has happened to most of us if we have had these events happen early in life. We talked at the very end about the limbic system hijacking. It's really the amygdala that gets hijacked within the limbic system, but the limbic system also includes your hippocampus, and the hippocampus has to do with memory. And interestingly, if you have been exposed to enough trauma, the hippocampus can shrink and it affects your cognitive abilities. So the most important overlooked issue when it comes to distress that people have in later life and adulthood is a history of ACEs. And ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. It has actually been written about extensively for the last 20 years. And unfortunately, it still hasn't made it into, I'm going to just call it mainstream medicine. I've been trying to get the military to be more active about using it in the clinics for which I have influence. And I tell everybody about this everywhere. And that is because we have the data that says evidence-based medicine, that they are not bringing in the evidence. And the reason that I think that might be happening is there's so many people that have adverse childhood experiences. The practitioners are like, oop, therefore, by the grace of God, go I. And that is, I don't want to deal with my own issues, so I'm not going to bring it up with my patients, and I don't want to open up a can of worms. So anybody that has had any of this emotional trauma, and it's extreme trauma, fear, people that have been in a situation where they have been scared to death. Now we're just coming out of something where people were, because of what was happening with the news, and the misinformation and information constantly changing and people being told these terrible things that would happen if you do X, Y, and Z, we put an entire planet that was aware of this into a situation where they could be scared to death, because death was what was being propagated for everyone. So be thinking about that right now, that we all have this shared experience that we went through. And then failure to feel safe. Well, right now for the last 2 years, 3 years, yeah, we have been put in a situation where we have been told we are not safe unless we lock ourselves in a room by ourselves and no one comes near us. Well, that's completely diametrically opposed to healthy human beings need to be in a social setting. So now you have two opposing needs in order to feel safe: belonging within a society, and if you want to feel safe, you have to be alone. So I'm bringing this out into the open and putting words to what has happened collectively, because sometimes people don't know, what is it that I'm feeling that has happened to me? To be human is to have emotions, and to be human and thrive requires that we're in community. When we are expelled from community for any reason or made to be an outsider, it is very, very bad for our health. And the people that thrive and have the best longevity have community, and they have a sense of belonging. So just sit with that for a minute and think about what has happened collectively to everyone that was part of this. So you may see with your patients some kind of unreasonable behavior, or their reactions are far beyond what just happened, what they heard, what was said, just coming into the clinic. It's a mismatch. And this is because when people have any of this running in the background, the special senses, remember we talked about that in the cranial nerves, especially the ones that emanate from the medulla. So we're thinking, the vagus nerve and hearing and speech and facial expression. And then the eyes will do something where we hone in and dilate in order to look for the threat. We don't get a vote. Our limbic system evolved, and it was designed to keep you alive. And it was designed for threats that were very, very real, that had to deal with, you will die if you're not paying attention to what's going on. We don't have those threats anymore, but we still have a limbic system that is operating the same way that it did. So now the threats of the 21st century and what's happened in the last 2 decades, it really puts people at risk because their senses get activated. And so now they're just looking for something bad. They are just assuming out there something bad is going to happen. And so something very benign might have been said in a clinic, in a treatment room, out when people are socializing, and people take it as negative, or they'll get very, very defensive. And this is because those special senses and the amygdala are alerted and they're looking for the threat. In order to have good decision making, you have to have top-down control, which means your prefrontal cortex has to be on board. The way that we were designed is that if your amygdala gets activated by any perceived threat, 5 seconds, it's going to suppress your prefrontal cortex. And if you have had a lifetime, okay, so think about Jeff yesterday, adverse childhood experiences. He was in a very violent home. He had substance abuse. He did not feel safe in his home. He was always trying to flee. There are situations where people have this overactivated and they basically go off the impulse of what the amygdala is saying to do, rather than having the prefrontal cortex come on board to give good decision making. So when you see people acting very impulsively, or all of those times in your life where you did something very impulsively and it's like, why did I do that? Why did I do that again? It is because if the amygdala gets triggered by something, okay, and it's something you hear, something you smell, something you see, okay, we saw that yesterday, and you don't get a vote. It happens, you don't get a vote, and your prefrontal cortex can't come online. People don't know what to do until they know this is what happens. And once they know this is what happens, they can say, oh, I'm triggered. I just need to sit still and not do anything and wait for my prefrontal cortex to come back. This is one of the reasons treating the brain is so important. So I think you can probably see this funny t-shirt, which is my amygdala could beat up your prefrontal cortex. And for anybody that has these issues, it does. And if you've ever been in a grocery store or anywhere where there's a toddler or a young kid and they want something right now and they see the candy bar, they want it right now. That is the amygdala saying, I need to do this. I want this right now. I have to have it. And when they can't have it, they have a complete meltdown and temper tantrum. Well, I'm here to tell you this actually happens in boardrooms and other places with grown people that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, because their amygdala that is wanting something is beating up the prefrontal cortex, and they don't have that top-down control. So guess what? With frequency specific microcurrent, we have brain frequencies and we have emotion frequencies, and we have protocols for PTSD when this has happened to people, where we can start giving people back their sovereignty, when they can actually have ways to start improving and getting control once they understand what has happened. So it really, really helps to get your patient's trauma history. And you watched me do that yesterday with both of our demo patients. And you heard from Jeff, his was pretty challenging. And then when he finally, you know, as an adult had that serious injury to his hand, it was catastrophic for him and led to PTSD. So this is why it's like, what's the worst thing that ever happened to you? We want to learn to recognize what is going on with our patients, and then early on use these emotional protocols in treatment. I gave you the case yesterday of the young lady with PTSD who was coming in for pain, which this is what our patients are going to do. And very, very early on, I was using emotional protocols in order to help her. So if you're not ready to ask the questions and you're using frequency specific microcurrent, it's okay, because you can start by dealing with that standard concussion protocol, the nervous system reset, which addresses what happened to people from all of those traumas. So this is a beautiful, beautiful rendition of the vagus nerve. And it is to remind you that that nerve is everywhere. It is everywhere. It's brain down to all of your viscera and your squishy bits. And it's a two-way street. It's from your squishy bits and viscera, lungs, heart, and it goes up and tells your brain. This is the nerve that is communicating, hey, everything okay down there? Yeah, we're good. Okay, everything is good up here also. You can engage with community. But guess what? If you have an infection and you get sick, one of the reasons that people withdraw and want to go into, I call it the cave, is because they are getting information to their brain that the immune system is saying, ooh, we have a problem here. And it actually triggers things in your brain that make you want to withdraw. Your microbiome is having a conversation with your vagus nerve also. And so it's telling the vagus nerve what's going on. So remember, we have this two-way street with communication. There is no separation between the brain and the body, and that's because we have a vagus nerve that has afferent and efferent fibers. So one of the ways that you can evaluate whether someone has good vagal tone is just using a tongue depressor. And super, super easy to do. You just depress the tongue so that you can see the uvula, and then you have the patient go, uh. And then when they do that, you can see which direction the uvula is going to. The uvula will always point to the direction for the side that is working, because that is the muscle that has tone, or it raises up in the center and both sides are working. So remember, the cranial nerve for the vagus, which is 10, is also the motor power to the back of your throat, which lifts the uvula. And so this is how we can start assessing what is happening with speech, facial expression, and how well the vagus tone is. So I recommend testing everybody for that and taking a look. You can use the flashlight on your phone, or you can use a light that we use to look at the pupils in the eyes. So I talked about the number one issue that we have is adverse childhood experiences. I'm just going to give you the history on how that questionnaire came out. So it turns out at Kaiser Permanente, okay, so in our backyard here in California, Dr. Folletti was running a weight loss clinic that was very, very successful in the 1980s, and they were getting great results. The challenge is he had all of these people dropping out and like in record speed, gaining back all of their weight. Fortunately, as a very, very curious man, he wanted to know what had happened and why these people who had transformed their bodies, their weight, their health, why it changed. So he actually called up these patients. There's 286 of them, and he asked them to come back, and then he interviewed them. Well, lo and behold, when he interviewed him, it turns out that every single one of them had suffered childhood trauma. And in that, he realized that the weight was a protective mechanism against engagement and fear, and actually anyone being attracted. Now, this happened to men and women. More and more men are coming forward about the sexual trauma that they experienced when they were young, which is really, really helpful. So it's men and women, but predominantly women. So later on, what he did is he teamed up with Dr. Anda, who was at the CDC, and then they actually put together this study through Kaiser Permanente. And what they did during this study in San Diego is they enrolled nearly 18,000 people. So everybody that walked through the door that said yes, it was consecutive, they just, enter these people into the study. And so think about this, Kaiser Permanente, these people all have insurance. You are dealing with people that it's us. They're employed, they're college educated. They have jobs, they have insurance. They don't have the security issues that we think of when there's problems like this. It was not an issue of poverty, lack, or non-access. So now you've got these people coming in, and basically you had an average age of 57, and they came up with 10 questions in 3 categories, and it had to do about abuse, neglect, violence, mental illness, and incarceration. And they were able to find out what was actually going on with these average employed, college educated, middle-aged people. Here's what happened when they did that study. So, and this is the one that was repeated back between 2011 and 2014. And this was multi-study states. So there was 23 states involved in this study, and they found out 38% was the number of people that have no ACEs. 38%. 38% of the population. Everybody else has experienced some kind of adverse childhood experience. And then what was so shocking to me is that you've got 25% of the population has had 3 or more ACEs. Every time they've done this study, it is reproducible that we're seeing a high part of the population that has experienced ACEs, adverse childhood experience, and it is not benign, because when they then checked what happened to people, it turns out that the top 10 chronic diseases that we have patients come in with to our clinics when they have a Western diagnosis, they had ACEs. So there is a correlation between having ACEs and having some kind of chronic problem later in life. So this is going to be substance abuse. This is going to be drug abuse. If you've had 5 or more ACEs, there is a 5,000 time likelihood that you are going to use heroin. People end up with obesity, they end up with chronic pain, they end up on workers' comp, they end up with injuries, they end up with diabetes, cardiovascular disease, they end up with COPD. Think about that. We already know where these top 10 diseases come from, okay? And it is because what happened when you were a child. And 0 to 7 is a really, really important window for me, but they went all the way up to 17 years old with this. So now you can see that we really actually have to know what happened to the person that has these issues, because they are more likely to engage in risky behavior. They are more likely to be going for substances or things that will try to make them feel better. And I'm just going to tell you that yesterday, some of you probably went, oh my gosh, did she just say that? Exercise dependence. You've had some of these patients. Heroin. They're both addictions. All addiction is the same to me. And I don't assign anything punitive, because the line is not, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? We are going to punish you. It's, what happened to you that this is what you're doing? Exercise dependence and workaholics, we praise. But guess what? It's still in the addiction category because of what happened to people. So for me, it's all the same. It's just some have worse consequences. Now, I'm going to tell you with all of my, because remember, I work with a lot of athletes, my clients that are exercise dependent, when they get hurt and they can't exercise, they're batshit crazy. They cannot cope with their lives if they can't exercise in the way they're accustomed. That is their drug. So this is where they become just as disabled in society as someone who is using heroin. So remember, I told you how high that ACE score is on someone who is at high risk for being a heroin abuser. And the reason for that is, guess how people feel when they use heroin? The immediate feeling that someone has is they belong. And what do you think the one thing they don't feel if they've grown up in a family where they've got an ACE score that is that high? No belonging, no community, no being seen. So what do you think happens when you are phylogenetically programmed to need to belong, and you never got it as a child, and you take a drug, and all of a sudden you feel that feeling, I belong. Well, guess what? We're phylogenetically programmed to go after that feeling and belong in a community. So this is why I say to you, there is a reason that everybody uses the substance that they use when they use it. And it's telling you information about them. It's not punitive when it comes out of me. It's information and helps to inform on how I can best serve that patient. And everything that I do from a standpoint of education, learning, and seeking, what else can I do, is about giving people every opportunity to heal as much as they can for what has ever happened while they're on planet Earth, so that they can give their gifts. Remember our little 7, 8-year-old girl that was disabled in a wheelchair? I had a tool and she got her life back. And then she got to share her gifts with people on Playground Earth. So that is always my goal. It's not punitive. And we all know that it did not work to be punitive for why people were doing drugs. So here's the research. Wanted to give you plenty of time to look at this. And it's the lifespan of what happens with ACEs. This has been very, very well researched, which is why I do not understand that every single pediatrician, every single internal medicine family practice in the military, we are not aggressively addressing what has happened to people so we can intervene. So as they age, they're aging with vitality. So we want to have an active, fabulous lifespan. What's the point in living out the end of your life disabled and in a nursing home? There is a way that we can give people their vitality back. So all you need is an ACE score of 2 or 3 in order to have chronic pain. It's a dose relationship. The more ACEs, the more likelihood someone is going to have a problem. And look at this, 80% of youth that have chronic pain right now, they have an ACE score. So this is one of the ways. Remember, I was talking about the neck, and I can look at the neck, and I know all these different signs of what's going on with people. I can basically tell you what someone's ACE score is based on the kind of complaints they have. I already know that it's there. I already know something happened. And that's because these scores have been repeated. We have the data. So if you have a greater than 3 ACE score, you're going to have a dramatic increase in functional impairment, anxiety, depression, and fear of pain. Okay, so we basically told people that there was fear avoidance behavior. You know, psychology and psychiatrists give everything a name, and then the name becomes a diagnosis. It's ridiculous, in my opinion. And I would tell any psychiatrist that, because I also know how they came up with the DSM, which is pretty ridiculous. People are having a normal response to something very, very abnormal that happened to them. And this is how we need to start reframing this. So just look at this graphic right here, okay? Because remember, we're talking about brain development, and this is why this is so important, and I'm all about the central nervous system. You have a window of time that's really, really important, 0 to 7, with brain development, because you are basically learning about your social environment and what the rules are, and you are a giant sponge. When you put a brain of a child in a bad environment and a dangerous environment and a violent environment and a chaotic environment, it changes the way the brain gets wired, and it's permanent. And so the best that we can do is educate people and then give them new behaviors to run alongside and run a different program. But the wiring is basically always there. So we have these critical and sensitive development periods. And once you have adverse childhood experiences, and the more categories, the greater the impact on all of these terrible things that can happen, it actually changes the electrical, chemical, and cellular mass of the brain. The brain is changed. And then you're hardwired into the biology of how your brain is going to work, because you have to adapt. Remember yesterday I was talking adapt, adapt, adapt. We are adapting from the time we are in utero. We are adapting to the environment. If we didn't adapt, we would all die. It's adapt or die as far as I'm concerned. So this is where we end up with these chronic diseases, psychiatric disorders, impaired cognition, work school issues. These are your kids, you know, in trouble in school, bullying, bad grades, can't pay attention, sleep deprived, brain not focusing, ADD. And then we have a high likelihood of obesity, alcohol, tobacco, and drugs, risky sex, and then crime, poverty, and intergenerational transmission and disparity. So it's like the gift that keeps giving. And then unfortunately, what we know now with epigenetics is once all of this happens and you get triggered, it changes gene expression. And this is where we have this huge opportunity to change what is happening in the brain with the modalities that we use and change the way the genes express. And I hope Jimmy will talk about mindset this afternoon, because nothing, and this morning and afternoon, mindset is so, so important. And what we put in our mind is so, so important. So anybody that I have that has really got a high ACE score, especially, or is already high risk for amygdala activation, don't watch the news. Do not watch the news. It is geared towards specifically activating it and making you feel fearful. And it's because they know we're already phylogenetically designed for that. So here's the 2 questionnaires. You can go online and download these. And the first one is the medical symptom questionnaire. This is a great, simple, numerical way to keep track of what people's complaints and systems are in their systems as they are going through treatment with you. So this is from the Functional Medicine Institute. This is one of the trainings that I went through early on in my career to actually understand systems-based medicine and ground up and upstream down for what is happening and look at everything from a cohesive standpoint. The other one is the actual ACE questionnaire. The original one is 10 questions, and we already talked about the categories. You don't necessarily need to know how people answered the questionnaire. You just need the number. And you can download this off the internet also. The military actually has one that goes up to 15 questions, and that's because people in the military can be exposed to things that we wouldn't normally see in our environment. And there's some really, really bad things that can happen in the military that we wouldn't normally be exposed to. There's some others that have added some questions, because now our biggest 21st century issue for kids is bullying, and there's some other things that can happen. So this is the one that has been standardized, though. So you saw me do this yesterday, except for one, because we went right into what is the worst thing that happened to you. So the first one is, did you have pain when you were a child? Any pain when you were a child? And the reason that I asked that is because we already have the data, right? And the data says that if you had pain as a child, 80% likelihood that you have got ACEs, right? So just by yes or no with that, I already have a data point really fast. I don't have to ask a lot of questions, you know, were your mom and dad mean to you when you were a kid? I don't have to ask anything personal on that first visit. I can ask this benign question that gives me so much information. And then I'm going to find out if they had stomach pains, if they had migraines, if they had headaches, if they had to miss school, if they were sick a lot. Gives me a lot of information. And then the second one is, saw me do it. So what's the worst thing that ever happened to you? And I ask it that benign and simply. It's an unloaded question and it's indirect. And then remember, the brain likes contrast. Remember when we were doing the frequency response test and I had Jimmy and Donna checking it with me? I kept on pausing the device and turning it back on, pausing the device and turn it back on. So the brain had the contrast. everything that you do, the brain likes contrast and the brain likes to figure something out. The way that it figures something out is you have to give it a direct question. If you ask someone, did this ever happen to you? They can immediately just say, no, nope. And they usually do. It's like, did you ever had any concussions? No, never had a concussion. And then you find out they broke their nose, they got hit by a softball. Oh yeah, I forgot, roller skating, ice skating, I fell on the ice. And yeah, I guess I was knocked out, but they just forget it. Whereas if you say, what is the worst thing that happened to you? And you saw Jeff do this for us, it's brain's going through all the catalogs very, very quickly, neurons firing everywhere, and it is looking for, ooh, what was the worst thing? It wants to give you the right answer. So they'll either come right out with it, or what they're going to do is say, well, emotional or physical. And as soon as someone says emotional or physical, they've already told you it's both, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to ask. You know it's both. So now you get to get them out of the hot seat and you just say, well, either one, which one do you think it is? If they tell you the physical one, it usually means they're not ready to talk about the emotional one. If they tell you the emotional one, they are so glad you asked, and they are so glad someone cares enough to start working through it with them. It allows you to get instantaneously in rapport with people because you are asking questions about what happened in their life that no one has ever asked, starting with the ones that's like, how many times did you hit your head? And that's one of the ways that I say it, because most people, for one reason or another, in childhood or as an adult, they've hit their head. So I don't say, did you ever? How many times? Because I could say 0, right? But if I ask them how many times, again, the brain has to go through that catalog. Well, how many times have you hit your head? People really do want to give you the right answer if you ask the question in a way that prompts them giving you the answer that provides the most information. So remember those 2 questions. It's an easy way in your interview to get information really, really quickly. So we're to close for all of this on the didactic for just giving you the deep dive on some of the things we can do with frequency specific microcurrent. And I gave you probably the biggest categories where you just have a filing cabinet in your brain now for being able to think about some things that maybe you haven't. And of course, you can take that with you everywhere in your practice, whether you're using frequency specific microcurrent or not. It's my preference to use it. I would never not use FSM now because of how quickly I can modulate the central nervous system. And it turns out that this is driving the bus for everything. And you heard Victoria yesterday when she said, oh, yes, I believe that my brain can solve all of this. And that's very true. So remember with your patients, as we went through this, they're allowed to have more than one thing wrong. And they usually do. My big line is patients are allowed to have more than one thing wrong. And that came out of the unfortunate situation with allopathic medicine, where patient walks in, it's like, oh gosh, I'm here for my wrist today, but I also have this shoulder problem and this thing in my neck. Oh, no. You've got to pick one. You can only have one problem. And then when you leave, you can make another appointment and we'll talk about the other one. Well, if the doctor actually understood what was going on, likely he would know it was probably coming from the neck and would have just said, we can only do one thing. I think we should investigate your neck first, even though you're here for wrist pain. Does that make sense when I say that? So patients usually have more than one thing wrong. And where they're feeling the pain, wrist pain, is not typically where it's coming from. And then even with the other issues in the body, remember, I'm thinking about the brain first and the central nervous system. When Jeff got up yesterday, he wasn't mic'd and he was moving around. And remember, I like, Jeff, where's your pain? And I could already see that he had this neck thing going on and he probably had fibromyalgia, which he's like, yeah, I've got pain everywhere. You heard him say it. When he left last night, his pain was a 0. And what was most fascinating to me is Victoria was shocked when he said that, like he had never said that before. So it'll be interesting to see how long that lasted when he comes in. So remember, we want to be addressing that central nervous system and peripheral nervous system first as the perpetuators of patients' persistent pain. And remember, within that central nervous system is the limbic system. And it could have been those things that happened in early childhood, the adverse childhood experiences, coupled by other very, very traumatic things that happen later in life. So when we use FSM, we have just this great opportunity to push our abilities, which is exactly what happened for me, because now all of a sudden, my impossible cases, it's like, you know what? There's probably an answer for this if I investigate it, and I can actually see what happens with these frequencies. So we want to just go back, and it's like, upstream, upstream, upstream. I can ask the question, and I bet I can deal with this. And then the other thing, I brought it up several times, stabilization. Getting people's stabilizers on and starting with that transverse abdominis and getting all of the other, I call them movers, my mover stabilizer model. And we want to get stabilizers on so movers can move the body. And that's when people in their body become instantaneously more functional, and staying out of pain is possible for them because they can go back and use their bodies the way they were phylogenetically designed, right? So I want to thank all of you for participating. I so appreciate all of the questions and comments that came in. It was just terrific to be able to interact. And you've heard me say it over and over again. It's just been amazing to work with the staff here. And then also Jimmy for actually saying, hey, let's do this together. I would love to present and giving me the opportunity to introduce this information. So here is my contact information. My email is shannon@myofascial.net. My training site for online training, I have the full foundations for microcurrent at that website. I have a neurology class. I have the post-concussion syndrome class. There's some other classes that are there. And that is frequenciesthatmend, all one word.com. So www. It's actually courses, COURSES, courses.frequenciesthatmend.com, and we'll bring that up for you also. And at the very end, you have my bibliography, or not my bibliography, my bio. And I cited everything during the presentation. So thank you all very much. We're going to take just a minute to switch over. And the very, very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come closer to the camera here. Remember, people were it's like, okay, what minerals do you put in? What do you use, Shannon? What do you use? And so these are my two favorite right here. So this is elemental. Okay, LMNT, elemental. And this is the electrolyte mix that has the sodium, potassium, and magnesium in the perfect balance that your body needs. I sound like a commercial, don't I? This is why I usually avoid this stuff. But this is what I use. This doesn't necessarily mean that this is what you would want to use, but this is what the athletes use also. This is what people do after they do sauna, if they've been sweating a lot, but it is a fantastic way to get these minerals in balance. And then the other one that I travel with, because I travel so much, is I have a electrolyte pack that is also a multivitamin, and it has vitamin C. I'm on planes a lot. This is a super, super easy way for me to make a delicious beverage. See, I do sound like a commercial. It's a delicious beverage, and it's fizzy, and it's so good for you. So these are the two that I absolutely love and always have in my purse. So we're going to just take a short break here so that Jimmy can get the microphone on, and we're going to switch over. Thank you so much. And we'll be back in a minute.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
I am live. All right, everybody. Let's get started on my part. Can I use the mouse? Yeah. Perfect. So I like to sit down because I like to draw. And so you'll see me draw a lot, and maybe stand up, but I like to draw. So today's outline, purpose of today's training, my intentions. I'm going to go over my the purpose of today's training, my intentions, the rules for today's webinar, and combining TCM and microcurrent, case studies. And then we're going to, like I said earlier this morning, we're going to do the demo when the patients come later this afternoon. Okay. So purpose of today's training, at least my part, is to increase your clinical results. That's my focus. Increase your clinical results by a minimum of 30%. And it's also to give you a foundation of how to combine microcurrent and TCM. I know everybody has different types of practices. I've had a variety of, I would say, models of practice. So I feel like I could, help you integrate microcurrent into your practice for those of y'all who are new to microcurrent. Before I continue, actually, I forgot to do the survey. I like to do this survey. How many of you have no idea who I am? Type into the chat. How many of you have, this is like your first time hearing me? No idea. A couple. Oh, quite a bit. Okay. Awesome. Well, it's, quite a bit of people. Okay. So a lot of people don't know who I am. So for those of y'all who have never met me and don't know who I am, I apologize. I take full responsibility. That is my responsibility to let you know who I am. So obviously I'm not doing a great job at it. So I'm excited to meet all of y'all and share with you my experience. So I'll go a little bit more about my background since you don't know who I am. So my intentions. My intentions are to help elevate our profession. This is the reason why that I'm here teaching, and I teach for eLotus every year. Is our TCM is such a small component of healthcare, at least here in the U.S. and definitely around the whole world. And being an acupuncturist, I know the power. I see the power of TCM, and it's just like, man, if there's 7 billion people in the world. I'm thinking, man, if 7 billion people all got access to TCM, that would change the whole world, right? Not just change their people's health, because if people get healthier, guess what? They're going to be more productive. They're going to want to help other people. It's just going to be a better world. And so that's what I'm on a mission to do, is to get the access to TCM for 7 billion people around the world. And thankfully, virtual is one of the best ways to do that. So I want to help you, for those of y'all who are attending today, I want to help you get better clinical results, help you be able to help more people, because I won't be able. So one of my missions is to help 1 million people around the world restore their body's natural ability to heal itself so that they can do the things they love to do. I personally, myself, cannot do that. And my team, I have a big team. I've got, right now, we've had about 20 team members, but even with my 20 team members, we can't do that. So I need your help. I need your help to help reach my mission, okay? It's also to help you be able to produce quick and consistent results consistently. This is key, especially for your own practice, for your own skill set, but also for the reputation of Chinese medicine, right? Rules. So yeah, you want to empty your cup, okay? So like I have a cup right here. well, it's not a cup, but it's a thermostat. It's filled with water right now. So literally, I cannot put any more water in this, right? So obviously, everybody knows the analogy. Your cup is your brain. If you think you already know everything, then you are this thermostat with filled water. Then everything that Shannon shared with you yesterday, everything that I'm sharing with you today, none of it's going to go in because you're full. So you have to empty it, right? You have to empty it in order to receive new information, because for the many of y'all who have never heard me speak, I do things very differently. I speak differently, and I want to apologize in advance. Sometimes some curse words may come out, and you're gonna probably think I'm very unprofessional. I apologize for that. That is not my intention. I'm just being myself. One of my core values that I live by, and also my team lives by, is transparency. I would rather be 100% transparent with you than to fake it, right? And so I apologize if I offend anybody. It is not my intention. My intention is to be myself and give you the accurate information. So everybody is right, nobody is wrong. Ask a lot of questions, okay? I love questions. So another thing that I do differently is I like to answer questions. I like to answer questions throughout. So I will have the Q&A popped up. So if you have a question about exactly what I'm talking about, type in and I'll look down at it and answer it as soon as possible. But make sure it stays on topic, okay? I know some people don't like that, but this is my style. And if I was taking a webinar and I have a question that the speaker says something and I don't understand what they're talking about, and I want to know, because if I don't know what they're talking about right then as they continue to speak, I'm still lost, right? So that's just my style. All right. And number four is be transparent, right? So I'm going to be transparent with you. So, hopefully you can be transparent with me as well. Okay. So my specialization. So my clinic specializes in these three main specialties. Okay. But we still treat everything. Okay. Because the public does not know specialty. The public knows acupuncture. Oh, you're an acupuncturist. Oh, you treat the same thing as the acupuncturist down the street. But for our purposes, my clinic specializes in neurological conditions. These are all of the conditions. Sam, is there a way that I can shrink the screen so I can see the chat and Q&A? No, it won't. If you can't, then I'll just work with it. That's all right. Yeah, I need a second monitor. That's what I need. Okay, so neurological conditions, multiple sclerosis, peripheral neuropathy, migraines, Bell's palsy, essential tremors, dystonia, insomnia. These are what we are great at. We are specifically, I am known for peripheral neuropathy in my community. I'm on there is a nonprofit neuropathy association called the Neuropathy Alliance of Texas, and they got all of the best neurologists within my city, which is Austin, Texas. If I didn't say that, my clinic is in Austin, Texas. So they got all of the best neurologists in the city to join that, to be on the medical advisory committee for this nonprofit. And I am the only acupuncturist on the medical advisory committee with them. And it's because of the results that we get in our clinic, okay? So chronic pain, I didn't change that. I apologize. So chronic pain, so any type of pain, and supportive care, helping patients get through cancer treatments. My tool belt that we have, so the services that we use in our clinic, obviously acupuncture, Chinese herbal medicine, manual therapy, frequency specific microcurrent, whole body vibration therapy, infrared light therapy, infrared thermography, and functional medicine. So these are some of the tools that we use in our practice. Do you need all of these tools to produce great results? No, you don't, right? You don't. You really, if you are just great at acupuncture, you can get phenomenal results with neurological conditions and chronic pain, obviously. But I'm just letting you know about my practice. Okay. Okay. So before I go into why did I decide to integrate FSM, so my practice, just really brief, I'm not going to go to detail. So my clinic is in Austin, Texas. We treat about 160 to 180 patients a week. We are the largest practice in Austin, Texas. I have 3 practitioners, full-time practitioners, that treat all of our patients. So we do a lot of, I consider, clinical research, right? And what that means is, we know exactly what each of these tool belts, these tools in my tool belt, we know exactly what each of them can do because we test it. And how do we test it? So a little bit more about me. I have a biochemistry background. So that's what I have my bachelor's in. And that's what I did. I ran tests, right? So I just brought that specific, thinking process into the acupuncture clinic. And so how we do treatments in our clinic, we test everything. So we know exactly what acupuncture can do for the patient. We know exact results that herb medicine produces. We know exactly what the manual therapy and also microcurrent, the FSM. So we know exactly what produced what, okay? So that's just a little FYI. Okay, so why did I decide to integrate FSM, right? So 2 reasons. Number 1, results, right? So results are important. There's a reason why my practice is the largest practice in Austin. Austin, Texas has 400 acupuncture clinics and 2 acupuncture schools in a city of 2 million people, 2 million people, and we are the largest. And that's one of the big reasons is we focus on results only. That's one of our core values is results oriented. Okay. And now what does that mean? We don't focus on results for what we want as an acupuncturist, as a practitioner. We focus on the results that the patient wants, which a lot of times is different. So that's why I say patients want their problems fixed. So what does fixing a problem mean to you? Actually, let me ask you that. Type into the chat. What does fixing a problem mean to you? When you say you are fixing problems, what does that actually mean? Cured? David said cured. What does cured mean? If you can elaborate on that, David. What does cured mean? Finding the root of it. I try to look for more of the source. Patient satisfaction. Gone, never to return. Okay. Patient is free, is pain-free, sleep, to be free. Yeah, there's no wrong answer, right? All of you are absolutely correct. Improved quality of life, relief, removing roadblocks of getting healthier. Okay, awesome. Ability to function. Yeah, you are all correct. So let me give you our definition of fixing a patient's problem. So it's the combination of what everybody says, right? It's helping the patient eliminate the problem and whatever problem they had doesn't come back, right? And we add another criteria of our definition of fixing the problem, and that is the patient's body is able to self-heal by itself without treatments, without medications, without acupuncture, without herbs. That is our definition of fixing the patient's problems, right? Now, why is this important? Because this is tied into FSM, because FSM has an ability, and I'll talk little bit more about that later. So that's the first reason, results. Okay, so you need, in order for me to add any new tool into my practice, it has to generate massive results, not for one person, thousands of people, right? And since we treat a lot of people, we've treated thousands of people, we are testing it. So if I bring in a treatment and it doesn't work, it only works for 5 people, right? Then we're not using it. It has to produce massive results. The second thing is duplication. It has to be easily duplicated by another person. Because in order to help more people, there must be duplication. Because again, going back to my mission, I want to help 1 million people. I can't do it myself. I need your help. I also need a team. And if my team cannot duplicate my results, I'm not helping a lot of people, right? And so so whatever I bring into my practice, it has to be duplicatable, which means anybody, I can teach anybody. You don't need to be studying an acupuncturist for 20 years. You could be straight out of school. You could be a student at school, and I can be able to teach you. That is duplication. So those are the two reasons why I decided to integrate FSM. So for those of y'all who are on the mend of whether you can use this or not, or whether you need to study 20 years in order to learn how to get great results, you don't. Okay. Okay, treatment strategy. Oh, one thing I forgot to put is you need to take lots of notes, because this right here, this treatment strategy it's not just for FSM. It is for your any technique you use in practice, right? So this is the 2 steps to success to my practice. Number 1, you want to identify the dysfunctioning organs. Okay. So you need to identify the dysfunctioning organs. That's step 1. It's not to choose a tool, because all the tools work. Regardless of whatever tool you have, all of them work. But the key to getting great results, right, is you need to identify the dysfunctioning organs. We call it the root cause. And again, everybody has their own opinion about what the root cause is. In my clinic, the root cause is organ dysfunction. Because if in all your organs were functioning at optimal levels, you would not have health issues. You would not have symptoms, right? So if all of your organs were functioning at optimal levels, you would be self-healing. Like our brains, our bodies, we have a self-healing program. We were born with it, right? It's just through life we go and mess it up. So when your body loses that ability to self-heal, one of your organs dysfunctions. Which one? So the key is identifying which one, right? So how do you identify that? In our clinic, we use my functional pulse diagnosis that I created. And so we also rely upon imaging, blood labs. We love, my background is in biochemistry. I love Western medicine tests. They give us another piece of the puzzle, right? There's no diagnostic tool that gives us 100% of the picture of all organs. There's nothing right now. At least, maybe in the future there will be. Maybe it'll be like what's that movie? Black Panther. They had that little bed, and then someone can just lay them, and then the computer just scans them and can identify every single organ dysfunction and whatever's going wrong. So that's coming, but right now we don't have that, right? So right now we use functional pulse diagnosis, image labs. You can use your own diagnostic tool. Some people use facial diagnosis, ear diagnosis, abdominal diagnosis, right? It doesn't really matter which diagnostic tool you use, but here's a key about if you're not sure, if some of you are new, if you're not sure which diagnostic tool to use, find the one that can help you produce or identify consistently, accurately, right? Don't just go learn a ton of them. Learn the ones that you are able to learn, because not everybody can learn every single diagnostic tool, because there's different learning curves, right? We all have different superpowers and skill sets. And so for some, it comes easier, right? So find one that you can rely upon, that every time you do it, you consistently get the accurate diagnosis. That is key. Okay. So regardless of you use FSM, acupuncture, or anything else, that is key to success with your patients. Number 2, restore function via restoring communication, right? So, and this, again, this is just the way that I think. How we identify the organ dysfunction, then we got to think, okay, why did the organ dysfunction in the first place? I mean, yes, we eat like crap. Like I'm here, I'm going to admit it. I'm here in California. They have phenomenal Taiwanese food. So I am eating not super unhealthy, but it's unhealthy, right? Because it's so good, right? And so what you put in your mouth, you obviously damage your own health, right? We all know that. If you don't exercise, you don't, mental health, if you don't take care of your mental health, you're stressing yourself out all the time. That's going to create a cascade reaction, which causes, the psychological health can affect your physiological health and vice versa, right? So organ dysfunction, what's the cause of organ dysfunction besides our self-induced reasons, right? So my interpretation is a lack of communication. So if you imagine, I'm going to draw, let's see, get my whiteboard. There's no whiteboard here. Yes, there's no whiteboard. Let's use this. Let me see if this works. Hey, Sam, I don't think this pen works. No, I use my finger. Yeah, the pen doesn't work. Okay. Well, I'll keep talking while he changes the battery. Let me delete it first. Delete this part. I'll use my finger for now. How about that? Okay, so here's your brain. Here's your organs. So why do organs, so I'm answering the question, why do organs dysfunction? If you didn't self-induce it, why do they dysfunction, right? They dysfunction because they lose communication, okay? They lose that communication. So for those of y'all, and I'll give you an example, for those of y'all who are married, try going 1 month and not talking to your spouse and see what happens, right? I mean, my wife, who's in this very room right now, I mean, she tries to talk to me every second. Okay, too much communication. But so if I don't talk to her for a month, man, I mean, I'm gonna, yeah, I'm gonna be in a big problem. So that's the same with our organs, right? Our brain, our central nervous system, our brain, our spinal cord communicates with the rest of the organs, the rest of the body. Every single cell, right, is connected to your central nervous system through the peripheral nervous system. And so our CNS is our CPU of our body. If the CPU, the CNS, is not able to communicate with anything, any organ in your body, do you think that organ is going to be functioning properly? Right? It's not. So communication is key. And how do we communicate? It's through the nervous system. The nervous system controls everything. And I know I am using very simple terminology, and I do this intentionally because this is how I communicate with everybody, all of our patients in our clinic, and even physicians. You would think that talking, not to get off track, but you would think that talking to physicians, you need to use technical terms. You don't. Actually, they prefer these layman terms, right? Because why? Because if they can understand it, then they can explain it to their patients how acupuncture works, right? And so this is how I communicate. And this is why patients understand. Patients love my explanations because I talk in their language, right? But going back to this, in order to have, optimal functioning organs, you need to have proper communication. And that is done through the nervous system. So why do I have, acupuncture and FSM down here? Because so far, based on what I've tried I started my practice in 2007. So I've had it for 15 years, right? So over the 15 years, I've tried so many different things that acupuncture and FSM are the only things that can reestablish communication between the central nervous system and the peripheral nerve and every single organ in your body. So when an organ dysfunctions, your liver dysfunctions, it's because there is a lack of communication. So if you also imagine physically, right? Let's say you have this nerve. You have this nerve. Let's see. peripheral. There you go. You have the nerve, and the nerve has myelin sheath, right? There you go. These are the little sausages, sausage buns, right? So that's obviously it's not accurately drawn, but that is a normal nerve, right? And if your nerve is like this and it's missing a couple of sausage buns, do you think the communication is going to be, good? It's not, because the sausage buns allow the nerves to communicate like this. They jump, right? And that's why things happen in a millisecond, right? But if you are lacking some sausage buns on your nerves, then the communication is like this. It slows down and then it jumps. That slow communication, right? Just the same thing. If you're married, if my wife tells me to go do something and I don't respond to her for an hour, she's going to get pissed off, right? Because my communication to her was slow, right? And so I was missing some sausage buns, right? That's why. So, communication is super important, and it's through the nervous system. The acupuncture actually, this is the beauty of acupuncture. Acupuncture has the ability to retrain your brain, reconnect the central nervous system to every single organ in your body. Okay. Now, FSM has that same ability, right? And the beauty of it is you don't have to use needles. Okay. Does that make sense? Type in the chat. Am I confusing everybody, or does that make sense? All good. Yes. Okay, perfect. Let's move on. So this is key. The reason why I spent so much time on this, because I'm going to come back to this, because a lot of your questions are going to revert back to these two steps. Number one, identify the dysfunctioning organ. Number two, restore communication. Where do you get more sausage buns? Well, you can, in Texas, we have a grocery store called HEB. You can get more sausage buns. But kidding aside, so when your myelin sheath is degenerating, there could be an autoimmune component. There's a autoimmune neurological autoimmune disorder where your body attacks your own sausage buns and it starts eating at it and it goes away. So it could be a nutrient deficiency, right? This is why some neurologists, one of the functional neurologists who does functional medicine, she does a lot of nutritional testing, and that can help, right? So that's how you can, but once your sausage buns are completely gone, your myelin sheath are completely gone, I have not seen anybody be able to regenerate it. Okay. All right. Let me see if I can move on. Let's see. I need to move. Maybe. Let me go. Exit here. There we go. Let me delete this drawing. So yeah, yes. Do you address the autoimmune component with the FSM or TCM? Absolutely. So again, this is one thing that you're going to learn from me. I do things very, very simple. It is not complex in my clinic. And that's the reason why my acupuncturists can duplicate my results, because my treatment systems are so simple. So I'm probably butchering your name. I apologize. The 2 steps to success right here. Do you address the autoimmune component? Yes, I do. You figure out, number one, step 1, what's the dysfunctioning organ? So you can think about, dysfunctioning autoimmune. Autoimmune, what does autoimmune mean? Autoimmune means your body's attacking itself, right? So then you got to think, because number one, step 1 is organ function. Which organs control your immune system? So Yale, if you want to, or anybody else, which organs, this is a question to everybody, which organ controls your immune system? Doesn't matter TCM, doesn't matter Western medicine. It's all the same, really, okay? So who knows? Spleen, stomach, yes. Spleen, yes. Lung, kidney, lung. Yeah, so a lot of organs, right? So one You can say Western medicine or Chinese medicine. I just combine the two. Your intestines. Your intestines are one of the main organs that control your immune system. The balance of the beneficial bacteria and the harmful bacteria, that dictates your immune system. When there's an imbalance of that, for example, your good bacteria is at this level. This is a balanced immune system. This is your good bacteria. I'll put G. This is bad bacteria. I can't write. Because the good bacteria always has to suppress the bad bacteria. But when the bad bacteria becomes level, if they become level with the good bacteria, then you already have an immune system imbalance and an autoimmune condition brewing. When it becomes over, you get infections, inflammation, and over chronic periods of time, that's when you start developing immune system. I mean, an autoimmune problem, right? So yes, Yael. Okay, Yael. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Yael. Yes, gut biome. So step one, identify the dysfunctioning organ, gut. It could be large intestine, lung, right? The spleen and stomach, right? Your digestive system, right? So you start looking at those. So then you start pinpointing which one of those are dysfunctioning. And then you start fixing that organ. By how? Step two, restore function. It's really just that simple, at least in my practice. This is how we get phenomenal results consistently every single day, right? Because we keep it simple. We keep the treatment principles simple. Identify the dysfunctioning organ and reconnect the communication, okay? Because the body was built with the ability to heal itself. We just temporarily lost it, right? It doesn't need medication to help it, right? It needs good nutrition. All right, let me see if I can erase this because this will show up here. All right, let's come back. So I'm going to keep coming back. Yael, yeah, come to Austin. Come to Austin. I welcome you. Frequency specific microcurrent therapy. So this is a way that for those of y'all who are excited about implementing this, right? How do you explain it to your patients? Because if the patients don't understand what the hell you're doing, they ain't gonna want to do it, right? Same with acupuncture, right? You're about to stick that where, right? You're about to electrocute me, right? What is the purpose of electrocuting me, right? These are some of the things that are in their brain that they may not tell you, but they're thinking it, right? And especially if they can't feel it, that's another thing. Is this even working, right? These are the questions that you're going to be getting when you implement microcurrent. So I like to use this explanation. This is all, again, with my treatment principles of communication. So imagine every single cell in your body has a specific phone number. Every single cell, let's just say organ. Every single organ in your body has a specific phone number. Your liver has a phone number. Your spleen has a phone number, right? As long as your brain, your CPU, your central nervous system has that phone number, then there is direct communication, right? Because if your brain has that phone number, they can call that organ and there's direct communication. Now, when the brain loses that phone number, ooh, now I can't call Mr. Liver, right? Or Mrs. Liver, it doesn't matter, right? So if your brain can't call your liver, then there's no more, there's miscommunication. And that's when disorders happen. So what FSM can do, microcurrent therapy can do, especially the device, oops, I don't have the device, but we'll bring it up later. This specific microcurrent device can program specific phone numbers for the brain to call. Now, how cool is that? So if I give you the phone number for Sam, right, then you'll be able to call him and you will have communication. So if I can use this device, actually, Shannon, can you give me one of your devices just so I can show them? I don't need the leads or anything. Perfect. Just give me the whole thing.
In the fabulous case.
Yes. So if you, so this is the beauty of FSM, right? You see all these numbers, you can put, that's what they're for. You can type in phone numbers. You can type in phone numbers to specific organs, tissues, right? Shannon went over a lot of them yesterday, the frequencies. We call them frequencies. I call them phone numbers when I'm talking to patients. So I'm programming a specific phone number for your brain to call. And I'm sending that phone number to your brain. So now your brain knows the phone number it can call. So if you had like the autoimmune, Yael was talking about autoimmune. Okay, what's the phone number to large intestine? Because the large intestine controls the immune system. So I want the phone number. I want to make sure my brain is calling my large intestine, right? So there's direct communication so we can get it back functioning again. That's the beauty of FSM, right? And that's the way that I explain it. So hopefully that makes sense to y'all. And hopefully that was helpful. All right. You ready for case number 1? Let me see if I have any questions. No questions. Okay. If you have a question, actually you can type it into the chat because I'm following it right, live. Okay. Okay. Awesome, yo. Yeah, that explanation, every single one of my patient understands exactly what we're doing. Okay. So case number 1. Chronic joint pain and migraines. So remember, we treat a lot of neurological conditions, chronic pain, and so forth. So history, this is a 18-year-old female. Onset was more than 5 years ago. She's tried all these different types of medications, the standard concoction when she goes to a pain management, right? Beta blockers, antidepressants, anti-seizures, NSAIDs. She's even tried chiropractic. She's even tried B12. And so all of those things. She's been to a neurologist, pain management, PCP, chiropractor, rheumatologist, gynecologist. They did an MRI and they actually found a slight Chiari malformation, right? But they said it's not severe enough to be giving her all the migraines, the severe migraines. She did blood tests, all negative, according to their physicians. We didn't get access to the blood test, so I don't know if they were truly all negative, because physicians only look at when physicians look at blood tests, they only look at are they within the normal range. And if they're within the normal range, they will tell the patient, oh, you're fine. It's all in your head, right? But as Shannon discussed yesterday, it is all in your head, right? Because your CPU controls everything. And this patient is terrified of needles. So maybe some of you are wondering, why the hell does she call an acupuncture clinic if she's terrified of needles, right? Because she's desperate. She's been to everybody and nobody is helping. She joined a dance team and started out with knee pain. This is how it progressed, which progressed to other extremity joints, especially her hands. Patient is also an artist. Her pain, this is a visual analog scale, so the pain scale is 8 out of 9. It was constant. The chiropractic provided and rest provided temporary relief when she got the adjustment, but then it would all come back, right? Remember, she is 18 years old, aggravated by any exercise. So she had to quit the dance team, right? Actually, I believe she likes to draw, and she had to even stop that because she has chronic joint pain everywhere, right? And life effect. She loves to run and be able to exercise for more than 30 minutes. So let me, for those of y'all who have heard me talk before, who knows what life effect is? Type in the chat. What does life effect mean? Nobody knows. Goals. Yes? Yes, Katerina. So they're the health goals. So remember, ultimate goal the patient wants to achieve. Yes. Yes, Chris. Exactly. So life effect is something we focus on. Remember in the earlier I said that our clinic, we focus on the results that the patient wants, right? That's what life effect is. Life effect is the exact results that the patient wants, right? So what she wanted was not to get rid of her joint pain. This is going to sound weird, okay? So just follow me. She didn't want to get rid of her joint pain. She didn't come to us to get rid of her migraines. That is not why she came to us. Yes, she wrote that in the chief complaint, right? But that's not the reason why she came to us. And that's not the solution that she's looking for. What she's looking for is what I wrote down here. She wants to be able to run. She wants to be able to exercise. Yes, Rebecca, she wants her life back. That is why she came to our clinic, not because of her migraines, not because of her chronic joint pain, right? She wanted to be able to go back to the dance team. She wanted to be able to draw again. Those are the reasons, okay? So super important. If y'all didn't take notes on that, I highly recommend you write what I just said down. This will help you get the result that your patients want. And guess what? If you help a patient get what they want, guess what? They're going to refer their friends and family to you. So remember, one of the tools that we have in our clinic is a thermography camera, right? Anybody here have a thermography camera? Does anybody not know what thermography is? If you don't, then I'll explain it. Type in the chat. Who does not know what thermography is? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll give a. So thermography is it's a camera, okay? It's just like a camera that detects infrared heat that comes out of our bodies. Every one of us generates infrared heat, right? So it detects, like when like COVID just happened, right? So they have a lot of thermography cameras in the airports because they can pick up if someone has a fever, right? So where does that infrared heat come from? Our blood circulation. So this is like a indirect way or a direct and indirect way to detect some of your body's circulation, not all of it. It does not detect internal organs. It's mostly in the superficial. So a lot of for muscles, for nerves, superficial nerves, very good. We treat a peripheral neuropathy. It's perfect for this, right? But we use this to scan everybody because, more information is better, right? So you'll see we scanned her. So this is right here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. This is the front of her body, her legs. You can see her feet are freezing cold. You can see how you can't see her feet. So green is normal. Let me establish normal. Green is normal. Red is heat, hot, acute inflammation. Dark blue, purple, black is cold, which is poor circulation or no circulation. All right. So you can see her legs are freezing popsicles. This is the back, her calves and her hamstring, freezing popsicles, right? This is her arms. They're actually green. So her arms were actually pretty good. Her hands were pretty good, right? But she had joint pain in her hands too. Okay. So the way this helps us is it helps us see, is it in the muscle or is it especially in the hands, is it in the joints, right? So in her situation, this pain in her hands was not caused by inflammation in her joints. That's probably why when she went to the rheumatologist and they said they couldn't help her, right? Because her hands are green. If someone who has, let's say, rheumatoid arthritis, on the thermography scan, it will usually, if they're in a flare, they will show up bright red. But if it's a chronic rheumatoid arthritis patient, it will be black or blue, right? But in her situation, it's green. So her joint pain in her hands that she was feeling most likely was a cervical problem, not a local problem, right? And then if we look at the scan down here below, it confirms it was a cervical problem. This is the back of her neck, the front of her neck. Her neck was on fire. Her head was on fire. She was like a hot head, right? Look at the sides of her neck. It's just like a fireball. So for her, it was in her head, right? Her problem was literally in her head. It was causing a lot of the issues, okay? Let's see. We don't scan on every visit. No, we only scan on the first visit, and then we scan on re-exams, which is once a month. Which camera do you have? I have Med Hot. I don't recommend people who are starting off using, if you want to get in thermography, I don't recommend it because it is expensive. It costs 40,000, right? I have 2 of them. So I don't recommend you do that. What I recommend is there is from the same company that makes it, FLIR. They actually have a little one that you can put on your cell phone. I don't have my cell phone. Chai, can you grab my cell phone? Thank you. You want to say hi? So there's one, FLIR makes one that you can connect to your cell phone. Okay. It's not as good quality as mine, but it's a good start, and it's only about $200 to $300. Okay. Let me go back to this and I'll answer more questions. So the treatment, twice a week, 2 treatments per week for 2 weeks to test her rate of response. Right. And for her, we only did FSM. Okay. So we only used this device. We did not use acupuncture. Remember, she was terrified of needles, and she wasn't gonna stay if we were gonna use needles. So guess what? We had something that was just like acupuncture without needles, which is the FSM. So we used this on her, right? And what do we do? What protocols did we use? So we used right here for 30 minutes on her lower back, Shannon's low back pain protocol, which focused on nerve, disc, muscle, and joints of the lumbar spine, right? And then on hands, we actually use her cartilage protocol, right? Which is joint cartilage pain from repetitive strain, overuse, old injuries, or faulty biomechanics. That's all we did. We didn't use, so this is like going back to what I was saying, we know exactly what each of our tool can and cannot do, the limits of each of our tool. So this, we treat some patients strictly just with FSM, no nothing else, right? The results, her intensity went from 8 to 9 out of 10 to 4 to 5 out of 10, right? That was 4 treatments, right? So 4 treatments, it dropped 50%, right? The pain went from constant to intermittent, right? The life effect, she hasn't tried running yet, but she was able to use her hands and start drawing. Just after 4 treatments, she was already regaining some of her life effect, right? Unfortunately for this patient, she couldn't continue due to finances. But she was on, I wanted to share this case because it was one of the cases that we used just FSM and nothing else. This is how we do things in our clinic. When I try something new, I only use that specific tool on patients, and then I observe the results. And if it can consistently produce great results for many people consistently, then we keep it. And that's why we have kept it. Someone said, yeah, a beautiful wife. Yes, I'm very lucky. FLIR, yes. That's how you spell it, FLIR. Cell phone thermography from whom? It's from FLIR, the same company, FLIR, FLIR. We just put it in the lower back. She also had the pad placements, right, were in the lower back and also the cervical spine. So even though, this is what we've noticed, even though it's the lower back pain protocol, but look what it's focused on: nerve, disc, muscle, and joints, right? And we also had the joint cartilage. So it can help every single, whatever cartilage, joints, hands, elbows, whatever. It's just like acupuncture. I would say it's exactly like acupuncture. I tell patients, with acupuncture, you don't get side effects, you get side benefits. And so with FSM, it's the same thing, right? No, I did not do the concussion protocol or a reset or anything else. These are the only 2 things I did. That's it. And actually, let me preface, I didn't do it. my team did it. So remember my criteria, duplication. So actually all of these cases that I'm about to share, I did not personally treat them. I wanted to share cases that my team did it, the phenomenal results that my team got, to showcase that FSM is duplicatable, right? At least in the way that we do it in our practice. All right, let's move on to case number 2, and then I'll come back for more questions, okay? So this is recurring Bell's palsy, frequent ear infection, allergies, autism. I know there was somebody yesterday asking about autism, right? So this will be a good case. This will be a good case for you to listen into, because this patient is 4 years old. The first 4-year-old Bell's palsy we have ever treated. We treat a lot of Bell's palsy, phenomenal results just with acupuncture, with my QRA acupuncture. But with this one, it's a 4-year-old kid, right? We're not sticking any needles in him, right? He's squirmy and crying and yelling. And I don't want kids yelling in my clinic, because we have a lot of patients in our clinic at one time. So this patient was actually referred to us by another acupuncturist. Third episode, very unique. Third episode of Bell's palsy in a 4-year-old kid, right? At 5 months was the first time, and then 2 years old, and then now 4 years old was the third time recurring. Let's see, at 5 months, when he had the first Bell's palsy at 5 months, there was no treatment, and he recovered after 3 months. At 2 years old, he got the second time Bell's palsy. He was given steroids, took 6 months, and only recovered 70%. Never recovered 100%. This time, 4 years old, onset, they think it was started by an ear infection, right? Which was true. He was given steroids, antibiotics, antivirals. Infection was gone after 1 week. Bell's palsy, 0 improvement. Went to another acupuncture, received 2 months of herbs. Allergies improved, but no change in Bell's palsy, and was referred to our clinic. This was literally last year, in September 14th. Seeing PCP, chiropractor, herbalist, occupational therapy. They did an MRI. It was negative. So nobody knew what to do. Previous Bell's palsy was right side. This time, left side. Like this kid is just like not fitting the standard Bell's palsy that we treat in adults, right? He can't close his eyes, cannot open his mouth, delayed speech. It's aggravated by common colds. Every time he gets a cold or sick, it doesn't matter. The Bell's palsy just gets worse, right? If he gets irritated, remember, he was diagnosed as autistic, but who really knows? Anytime, if his parents don't give him what he wants, he gets pissed off, it gets worse. Cold weather, fish, egg, and so forth. So the life effect. Obviously, we can't ask the 4-year-old what the hell, hey, what do you want to achieve, right? So the parents want him to be able to return back to school and live a normal kid life, because they had to take him out of school. It just was so bad. It probably flared up the autism. He was super irritated and disruptive in class. The Bell's palsy. I mean, he's feeling like crap, right? I mean, don't blame him. So TCM diagnosis. So we diagnosed fire in 3-jaw. So it was just fire throughout his whole body, right? The main organ dysfunctions we identified were lung, stomach, and liver. The treatments. We did 3 treatments per week for 2 weeks to determine rate of response. So my associates are the ones that treated these patients, okay? And so they attempted, with acupuncture, right? Attempted with no retention. They just poked it and then removed it, because the kid was just all over the place, crying, screaming, and stuff like that. So they did that a few times. They weren't able to use the acupuncture every single time, but what they were able to do every single time was the FSM. So we put the pads on him, and we used 2 protocols. One was a common cold sinus because he had allergies. Remember, he has tons of allergies. And the other one was just inflammation in general. Those are the only two protocols we did. And the results, the left eye started closing when he's sleeping, and patient was able to go back to school for half a day. This was after 6 treatments. Okay. 6 treatments of the FSM and maybe 2 or 3 acupuncture just inserted and removed. Okay. They also, I don't know if I put it in here. They also did, because they couldn't do the needles, they put ear seeds on him too. Put ear seeds and just pushed while he was in the office on these points. So right side, large intestine 4, 11, stomach 35, spleen 9, stomach 40, do 20, and 四神聪. Oops. Herbal treatments. So the kid was able to take herbs, which was great, because in order to fix allergies, you got to do herbs, right? At least our experience. So we give him 2 different types of herbal formulas. The first one was like the antiviral, because remember, he was getting over an ear infection. He gets common colds all the time. So we did antivirals like 普及消毒饮, 五味消毒饮, 温胆汤 for phlegm heat, 清气化痰丸 for phlegm heat. We did 1 gram 3 times a day. All right. That was formula number 1. So we did that to try to clear up the allergies, because I remember at the time he came in, he was stuffed up and all that stuff. So we did that for the respiratory tract. And then herbal formula number 2. And this is my invention. That's why I call it Jimmy's herbal prednisone, right? So what does it do? It works like a prednisone, but without the side effects, right? So now some of this I got from my mentor, whose also name is Jimmy Chang. And so I probably just tweaked one of the formulas. So 三种溃坚汤16味6七饮真人活命饮菊和丸. It works perfect like prednisone, but 0 side effects. And we did 1 gram 3 times a day there too. Okay. So we did a little acupuncture. We did a whole lot of FSM. We did herbal treatments. So this was his thermography scan. So look at this. So this was 9/14. Remember we do functional pulse diagnosis, which is my pulse diagnosis, and we detected it was fire in 3 jiao. And look at his thermography scan. He was on fire, literally, right? This was the front of his body, his head, his back. Look at his neck, his abdomen. He was literally on fire. 3 months later, look at how much the fire has reduced, right? You can see his back. It's probably at least 60% is gone. He still has some fire, right? But look at his belly. It's pretty much almost gone, right? So the results. Patient's dad reports son is smiling more. He's less irritated. Bell's palsy is 95% reversed. Autism side benefit. We weren't even focusing on the autism. We were just focusing on the Bell's palsy. Patient is back in school full time. The teachers reports that they noticed a significant improvement in his behavior in school, more focused and not disruptive, right? From a 4-year-old. Patient is able to recite the alphabet. He was just reciting the alphabet A to Z during the treatment, like crazy, right? You must love the alphabet. Patient is still receiving treatments at our clinic, because what is our goal? Remember, what is our goal in our clinic? Our goal is to get the patient's body where it's self-healing, where it doesn't rely upon us anymore. That's our goal, right? And that's what the patients want too, the father wants too. So he's still coming in to make sure that these results are holding and sticking, right? So, and they are. So that, again, that was done by my associates. All right. Oh, lots of comments. So let me see if there's any questions here. I already answered that. Yael, is it a cash? Are you asking me if I have a cash practice or do I bill insurance? I do bill insurance, but I am a cash-based practice. 70% of my practice is cash. 70. You have to change the position of the sticky pads for treating low back versus hands. We use Allison, so we use two. We remember Shannon showed you yesterday we can use 2 devices on one person at the same time. That's what we did for this kid. Do you run, yeah, how much is treatment for FSM? So we ran it just for 30 minutes. So what we do in our clinic is a little different because we, we treat a lot of people. And so we do the FSM only 30 minutes. So we do it like for other patients, it's while they're getting their acupuncture treatments, okay? But even with this kid, when he was just doing FSM, we only did it for 30 minutes. And just still, we get the results. And I think, one of the big things is going back to my treatment principle, identifying the dysfunctioning organ. If you identify the right dysfunctioning organ, that is the root cause, right? You can use any treatment and it will work. Some questions from yesterday. Shannon can answer those later. If you have questions about yesterday, type into the Q&A, okay? Don't type it into the chat. Christopher, how do you determine Acu or FSM for the rate of response treatments? Great question. So in this kid, because he had already been seeing another acupuncturist, right? So that's why we threw the kitchen sink at him in the beginning, which we don't do 99% of the time. So we always start off just with acupuncture first. That's it. Okay. And then we add in the one additional treatment at a time. We'll add the FSM in, do a couple of treatments and observe the effects. Then we'll add the herbs in. Then we'll go over their diet. Like we don't throw the kitchen sink at our patients because we want to know exactly cause and effect. And so does the patient. And when I explain it that way to the patient, all patients love that. QRA is my quick restorative acupuncture. As you saw yesterday, I don't use acupuncture points. You can say it's more of it's a combination of TCM, Western medicine. It was derived, I would say, my mentor was Richard Tan. So it's similar to the balance method, but so much simpler. I don't have all those systems. Yeah, we didn't look at the ACE, Rebecca. Diet. I'm not sure diet question. Did the fire show up on thermography? You saw that. Yael, why we did not do the brain protocol? We could have. We could have. We have this as a formula. My prednisone. No, that's not Jimmy Chang's prednisone. That's Jimmy Yen's prednisone. Sorry. Yes, my mentor is Jimmy Chang. But this is my herbal prednisone. So they don't have this. They have Jimmy Chang's, I think. Okay. All right. I think I better keep up with the settings on the device. That's a Shannon question. Are you doing brain? Okay, I answered all. Okay, let's go to the next one. Number 3, post-herpetic neuralgia. Okay, 48-year-old, shingles. All right, outbreak for 3 weeks in 2021 in the left side of his head and ear. Shingles is already super painful. But to have it on the left side of your head, that's just even worse. Rash went away at the end of October, but pain still persists. Diagnosed with post-herpetic neuralgia. They tried antidepressants, multiple anticonvulsants, ketamine, which was the only thing that provided relief. Cervical radiofrequency ablation 2 times. and 0 results. And that was through a pain management. This patient also had a slight Chiari malformation. Blood test all negative again. Wakes up. So this is what, I believe this is the male, yeah. Wakes up every morning with a 10 out of 10 pain. That's how he starts his day. I mean, how shitty is that, right? Takes pain meds, drops it down to 6 out of 10 until 3 p.m. And then it goes right back up to 10, right? When he came in, he was at 8 out of 9, constant. Ketamine is the only thing that alleviates it. It's aggravated. Trying to concentrate or any exertion, like just trying to be a human being, increases the pain. His life effect. He wants to go back to work. He wants to be able to visit his family, right? He can't do either. So TCM diagnosis: lung dampness, heat in stomach, liver, heart, and kidney deficiency. Organ dysfunctions: lung, bladder, kidney, adrenal glands. Okay. Treatment. We did 3 treatments in 1 week. So we did 3 treatments to test his rate of response to acupuncture only. We use these points in the area of these points: spleen 6 to 9, liver 6 to 9 on both bilateral legs, and the right hand, large intestine 4 to 14, and sanjiao 5 to 10. Okay. His first care plan. So obviously he responded great to acupuncture. That's why we would continue. If a patient doesn't respond, we stop treatments. Okay. So his first care plan was twice a week for 4 weeks. And then we added FSM into the treatment protocol. Acupuncture points the same. And we added, Shannon has a hepatic neuralgia protocol, and we did that for 30 minutes. And the Chinese herbs that we used were 柴胡加龙骨牡蛎汤 plus 知柏地黄丸、川芎茶调散、通窍活血汤, 3 grams per day, 3 times per day, 3 grams each time, 3 times per day. Sorry. We started this March 22. So this was March 16th. We can see not too much, redness, inflammation, right? But you'll notice a lot of coldness. Remember, blue is cold. So a lot of blue cold. So you can see around his neck is actually green. His face, right, is green, right? So what does that tell us? That tells us it's not a muscle problem, right? Because if it was a muscle problem, it would show up on the scan. So that means it is a cervical spine problem, right? Sometimes the cervical spine issues will not show up on the scan because it's too deep inside. But another thing is, look how cold he is. What does cold mean? Who remembers what cold means? Type in the chat. What does cold mean? Let me make sure you're still awake. Constriction, yes. What does cold mean? Poor circulation, yes. Constriction, yes. Yeah, so no wonder he's not healing, right? His circulation is not good. He's freezing cold. So this was literally a month later. Look at how green he is now. I mean, he's still cold. In the triceps, you're going to be cold, but look at his back. Look at his back compared to before. Look at his whole back. Circulation was significantly improved, right? So let's look at the results. This is just his intake. 322, left back of his head. So this is after, let me go back, sorry. 316, when do we start? 316. So this might actually be after 3 treatments. So he checked significantly improved, more alert, stronger, more energy. Overall, his pain goes down to, a 4 out of 10 from a 10 out of 10, right? See, 4 days relief yesterday. So he had 4 days relief from just acupuncture, from our QRA acupuncture. This is how we know what works, right? And what produces what. 329, back of his left head. It's down to a 2 now. Left jaw. So it's like it went from a big area and now it's like shrinking. It's localizing, right? Still doing great. After 5 acupuncture treatments and 2 FSM treatments. After 11 treatments and 8 FSM treatments, look at it. It's a 1 to 2 out of 10. Emotional part is good. No more anxiety medication. Back of head 5 is constant. He's sleeping through the night, right? So significantly better. Oops. And he's back at work, which is his life effect. Okay. All right. I think someone had some questions up here. Do you consider diet as cause for organ dysfunction? Absolutely. That was my joke, that I'm eating all these Taiwanese food right now, and that's why it's damaging my organs right now. So I gotta get some herbs, acupuncture, and some FSM. Since I brought my own device too, I'll be treating myself. Okay. Yes, absolutely. Are the formulas you mentioned standard textbook, or do you modify them? The separate formulas, you can get them through Evergreen. That's my #1 supplier of herbs, right? Yeah. So Leonard, what I do is the Taiwanese style. It's called Fang Jia Fang, which is Sam, you didn't ever get a pen, right? Oh, you're getting a battery. Okay, sorry. So let me see. Just let me know if you don't understand what I'm saying online. So it's Fang Jiao Fang, which is formula plus formula. I do add some single herbs into it, but my main combination of how I combine herbs is to add one formula at a time. I'm not at a time. Add formulas together to make a bigger formula, right? So all of those individual formulas, you can get them from Evergreen. Okay. Yael, yes. The PCA travel card. They fill it every time. Katarina, that answered your question. Do you just use one FSM on each patient, Chris? Yeah. So majority of the time, yes. Majority of the time we do. And here's the reason why. Because we still do acupuncture on them, right? So because acupuncture, they're coming in for acupuncture, we really only need one FSM device. Like for the kid, we had 2 on him because we weren't doing acupuncture. So if we're not doing acupuncture on the patient, I would start adding 2 or 3 devices, right? My herbal prednisone is 25% each. Okay, let's move on to the next one. All right, this is chemotherapy-induced peripheral neuropathy. This is my claim to fame, right? This is what got me on the medical advisory committee in that nonprofit to sit alongside the top neurologists in my city. Is because of this. We are phenomenal at treating chemotherapy-induced neuropathy, actually any neuropathy. And as Donna mentioned earlier, I actually did a neuropathy training for eLotus years ago, okay? We've updated some of the treatments that we've done, but if you want to learn how to treat peripheral neuropathy, go to that course, right? And that will give you the foundation. All right, so this is a 71-year-old female. Patient already had neuropathy prior to chemo, diagnosed with lymphoplasmacytic lymphoma cancer in 2017. Started with inumucin chemo 3 times a week, and it developed neuropathy, pins and needles, worsening, so that chemotherapy made her original neuropathy worse. So they switched to Velcade chemo twice a week for 4 weeks and then 1 week break. The neuropathy changed from pins and needles and it changed to burning. So chemo was reduced to once a week now with no weeks off. her granulocytes dropped too low, so they had to pause the chemo. And that's when they paused the chemo, that's when she came to our clinic. Okay. Number one medication neurologists love in neuropathy is gabapentin, right? That's the number one. Gabapentin was helping her sleep. Now she feels a low-grade numbness constantly. Burning is less intense. She uses a foot massager with a TENS unit. This is what she's doing at home, okay? Originally, she could feel the electrical stimulation. Now she can't feel it in her feet or her legs. So her numbness is getting worse. So anybody treat neuropathy in here? Does anybody know the progression of what the patient will feel in neuropathy? Progression of symptoms. Like which symptom starts first, and then as it gets worse, what is the symptom? Cement foot, tingling to numbness. Feels like toes are wrapped. Yeah. Cement foot. Yeah. Pain, then numbness. Yeah. Remember, yeah, all of y'all are right. This is what I have noticed treating thousands of neuropathy. I think I type, so I'll type it here. Yeah, I can type. Okay, let me type here. Yeah, there we go. Doesn't happen all the time like this, but it's 90% of the time. It's also a good diagnostic tool to tell you how severe it is. You got the pen? Perfect. Oh, switch it off? Okay. Oh, I can use both at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
It's the
cool.
same,
Oh, yeah, I like this better. I like this better. But let me finish typing this one first. Pins and needles. Okay. Can everybody see what I'm typing? Okay, great. So this is what I've noticed over, the 15 years treating thousands of neuropathy. They start off with pain, right? Pain is actually a good thing. If someone who has nerve damage, pain is a great thing, right? Because it's easier to fix. Then they go to burning, and then tingling, which is like the pins and needles, and then the numbness. When they start feeling can they feel all of these all at the same time? Yes. When it gets to numbness, it's already severe, right? So what does numbness mean? Numbness means the nerve is either dying, like literally dying, already close to dead, right? And then also they are dead. Like the patient will say, I cannot feel anything, right? And so that is a severe situation. And these are how you can communicate with the patients, because this will tell you how long it will take to reverse it. Okay. All right. Oh, I need to take a break soon. Yeah, sorry. Thank you for letting me know. When I start talking, I get excited and I forget about breaks. So yeah, why don't we, since I just started this section and I can give me a chance to flip the laptops, why don't we take a break? It is 11:17 right now. Let's come back at 11:27. Okay, 11:27.
Recording stopped.